morning, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to today's bipartisan Florida delegation hearing on hurricane recovery and resilience. I'm pleased to be joined by our newest colleagues, Randy Fine and Congressman Jimmy Petrona. I look forward to the production that they're going to bring to this discussion here, as well as the delegation. After the introduction of our guests, we will invite them to offer some brief remarks, followed by the Q&A sessions with our members. Our first guest this afternoon is Mark Wilson, or this morning, President and CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. I know when I was involved, Mark, you had the Federation, then was about 130,000. It was impressive. And the focus was mainly on small, medium-sized businesses and startups, which is still the case today, I'm sure. Next, we have Dr. West, Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Florida. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Wasserman Schultz for her brief remarks.
Thank you so much. Welcome to our guests. Also, a special welcome to Ken Graham, who is the Director of the National Weather Service at NOAA and has helped keep our entire state and country safe for many, many years. And we are appreciative that you are taking the time to join us this morning. And I also welcome Congressman Fine and Congressman Petronis. Looking forward to working with you. Me and I have worked together for many years on issues that are important to our state, particularly around insurance matters and so many other things. So good to see you again, and looking forward to working with you both.
So I thought we'd do an opening statement. So Mark, do you want to kick it off? Okay, go.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
So I really can't stress enough how critical it is that we are talking with one another. This is an important opportunity for us as a delegation to come together. We are, Congressman Buchanan and I have committed to making sure that at least quarterly that we hold our delegation meetings here in Washington. And we have a tradition in our state and in our delegation to make sure that it's all about Florida. And when it's all about Florida, we make sure that we stick together on the issues that are important to protecting our state. And we're going to wrestle today with an issue that unites us all, regardless of party affiliation, and that's ensuring that our federal government doesn't abandon Floridians in the next extreme storm. This summer, like every summer, every single family we represent will confront a potentially deadly hurricane season. In fact, many residents in Florida are still putting their lives back together after being upended by Helene and Milton. So getting our people back on their feet and ensuring Florida has the federal resources to do it is a top priority for all of us now and in the coming storm season. But we cannot ignore how many of the tools that we rely on to predict, prepare, and recover from storms are in serious danger from the Trump-Musk White House. Tools under threat swirl around us just like a hurricane. $10 billion in disaster aid has been illegally frozen, and no state has more stalled FEMA awards than Florida. Homeland Security Secretary Noem recently said she plans to eliminate FEMA. On top of that, Trump canceled the BRIC program, which sent a $150 million resiliency grant to South Florida just last year. To literally add insult to injury, now NOAA is ending hurricane warnings in Spanish. We face unimaginable cost increases from the Trump tariffs on what we must buy to prep for and rebuild from a storm. But our work today isn't just about money and budgets. With over 400 fatalities, 2024 was America's deadliest hurricane season since 2005 and the third costliest. Hurricane Helene alone took more than 240 lives, the deadliest U.S. storm since Hurricane Katrina, and warmer than normal oceans promise another busy season. But while we may disagree on how to best mobilize federal resources for Florida, we're united in the goal to protect everyone who visits and lives in our beautiful state. Worked with many of you, as I've said, for years to bolster FEMA funds, to rebuild our citrus industry and ensure oil rigs don't spill crude oil all over our beautiful beaches in the next storm. We have a history and reputation of working together, partisanship be damned, to do what's best for Florida and our constituents, and I know that we can do that today and in the years ahead. I truly look forward to it, and once more, thank you, Congressman Buchanan, for working with me today to have this conversation amongst the Florida family.
I want to thank Co-Chair Debbie. Just say I want to which emphasize we'd like to get your thoughts and your ideas, especially obviously all the members, in terms of make these quarterly meetings as productive as we can. So we want to get that feedback. So what we want to do do now is give everybody 3 to 4 minutes, give a little opening statement, then open it up to the members for questions. And Mark, if you don't mind, CEO of Florida Chamber, you can lead off.
Okay, well, we'll do our best. There we go. We get it figured out. That's the Florida story. We eventually get things figured out, right? Anyway, thank you for having the Florida Chamber here today. And I just want to real quick make some comments about how we're doing in Florida and what's going on with resiliency. I think it's one of the most important conversations a state like Florida can have. Just to set the stage, we're number one in the country for new business startups. I say all of that just to say, despite the storms and despite what we have to talk about resiliency, the Florida model is working. And now what we need to do is we need to continue with what a lot of you have started. So here's the point I would hope to make today. We cannot have a nonpartisan conversation about how to be better in Florida without acknowledging we've had another tsunami, which is lawsuits over the last 25 years. It's wrecked our insurance markets, and it's made some of the wrong decisions over the last 20 years. Now, thanks in part to people on this panel, Congressman Fine and Petronas, welcome. Thank you for the work that you've done in Florida over the years. Florida now has the lowest property insurance increase in the United States. The lowest in the country. We have 12 new insurers that have moved into Florida in the last 18 months since the reforms. We've had at least 100 either rate reductions or rate freezes because of the lawsuit. This is going to incentivize more competition. It's going to incentivize resiliency. It's going to incentivize innovation, which is what we want. So as we set this up, and I'll turn it back over to you, to the panel, 3 things you're going to hear from the Florida Chamber. We have to improve resiliency. We have to improve mitigation efforts. Florida's a leader in that, but we need to do more. Second, we do have unnecessary costs and uncertainty and delays in the system. This has been going back 2 years. The easiest way to look at it is Florida's pretty fast. The federal government coming in has been really slow. And the third thing is we need more certainty. When people lose their business or they lose their home, they immediately need answers. We can't wait 30 days, 90 days. We can't wait in some cases. So what you're going to hear from us today is let's keep doing the reforms that we've been doing, and let's find a way to have the federal response, whatever it looks like, let's have the federal response to be certain and to be fast. And that would be what we would ask for. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Members, my name is Wes Brooks. It really is my privilege to serve as the Chief Resilience Officer on behalf of Governor DeSantis and all of your constituents. It's also my honor to join you today from this side of the dais after 6 years of combined service to Congressman Mast, as well as your former colleagues, Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen and Senator, now Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. As head of the statewide Office of Resilience, I have two major responsibilities: providing support to all of Florida's local communities as they work to limit their residents' exposure to flooding, and also coordinating flood resilience and mitigation activities across multiple state agencies. Cumulatively, those state agencies are managing over $9 billion in resilience investments across the state, critical infrastructure, public assets, and another $6.5 billion in ecosystem restoration and water resources projects just since 2019. Floridians have certainly been tested with 6 landfalling hurricanes over the past 3 years: Ian, Nicole, Idalia, Debbie, Helene, and Milton. The governor, the Division of Emergency Management, our Florida State and National Guards, and all of our state agencies and partners have leveraged every resource imaginable to help our fellow Floridians. Your family, your friends, our neighbors, all get back on their feet as quickly as possible. A quick aside, in terms of power restoration, right? 3 days to get full power back to every home it was safe to do so after Hurricane Debbie, 7 days after Hurricane Helene, and 7 days after Hurricane Milton. We've never seen that before in the state's history. We are getting better with every single storm. Part of the way we do that is by ensuring our disaster response and recovery activities are locally executed, state managed, and where necessary, federally supported. State management by DEM, helped by my friend and colleague Kevin Guthrie, focuses on streamlining requirements, reducing bureaucratic barriers, and ensuring flexible support for resources so that we can make sure we reach communities as quickly as possible. And again, deliver those resources as flexibly as possible to those communities. But we're not just reactive. Florida understands the power of mitigation to reduce storm impacts and enable even speedier recoveries. Governor DeSantis' bold leadership and vision has successfully transformed Florida from, as Mark mentioned, best in class for emergency management to also being the national pace setter for flood preparedness and proactive adaptation. Protecting and augmenting Florida's flood-protected beaches, mangroves, and oyster and coral reefs, ensuring local communities have the technical capacity and financial resources to understand and address critical flood vulnerabilities, and also accelerating stormwater management capacity improvements across the state. Governor DeSantis has championed pragmatic flood solutions that are delivering economic and environmental benefits while also enhancing quality of life for all Floridians. I really look forward to the rest of our conversation.
Good to see everybody today, and just what an honor it is to be with everybody. People ask me, it's my favorite place to live, and I tell them Florida every single time. On the record. Yeah, exactly, at the Hurricane Center, just what an experience there. So, and some busy seasons while I was there too. Some of the record seasons that we had there were just pretty incredible. Just wanted a brief overview. The 2024 season, unfortunately, we verified our forecast. Everybody just had to be patient on when those storms were going to occur. So the named storms we had in 2024, 18 named storms, and our forecast was for 17 to 25. Hurricanes, we had 11 hurricanes in 2024. We forecast 8 to 13. Major hurricanes, 6. We forecast 4 to 7. So a pretty good seasonal forecast. We'll have another one coming up at the end of May, looking at that seasonal forecast. It was the third costliest tropical cyclone season on record. And that's what happens when you have some of these big landfalls. We had 3 landfalls, Debbie, Milton. I wanted to give a big shout out to the hurricane hunters. 30 years in the National Weather Service, Milton was the first time I flew into a storm. So I was, whether I was in New Orleans or at the Hurricane Center, I was too busy. I couldn't fly. You're too busy on the ground. So this is the first time in this job I was able to fly. Just a shout out to the hurricane hunters going into the storm at about 8,000 feet to build a real good idea of the structure of the storm, feed that information into the models, and it really makes a difference. Hurricane hunters, anywhere from 10 to 15% difference improvement in our forecast because of that data we get from the hurricane hunters. So it's an interesting tidbit there. Because we did a great job last season, the cone's getting smaller for 2025. It's good and bad. So in 2025, the cone of uncertainty will decrease by about 3 to 5% in most cases. So it's based on the last 5 years of error. So the better we do, the smaller the cone. And if we have a couple of seasons that the forecast isn't the best, the cone would actually get bigger. But in this case, it's smaller. So for 2025, as this cone shrinks, we have to think about our products and services to make sure people know well outside the cone. As you know, in Florida, you can be well outside the cone and see big impacts. So we have to look at our services and how we can communicate that to the public. So as we're going to look at the seasonal outlook this May, I think I want to do that. We're not going to do it in Florida. We're going to try to do it in New Orleans this year because it's the 20th anniversary of Katrina. Can you believe that? Because time goes so fast. So we're probably going to do the hurricane kickoff in New Orleans. But for this year, because the cone's getting smaller, we're going to look at a cone of impact. We're really trying to experiment with a better cone to communicate some of these changes. So the cone of impact is going to have storm surge on it, inland floods, severe weather, and a lot of that will be outside the cone. So working with the emergency managers, we continue to do that with emergency managers ahead of time. We're training them, getting them ready, and brand new. And we saw this over the last couple of days, and I did want to share something with you in the last couple of days because it does really point to how staggering, how busy it has been. So let me get this. So in this last event, the National Weather Service, April 2nd through the 5th, across the country, we issued 359 river flood warnings, 314 flash flood warnings, 180 flood warnings, 7 flash flood emergencies, 1,494 severe thunderstorm warnings, 561 tornado warnings. A weekend of the National Weather Service. This points to how important this agency is to this country. We continue to work with the emergency managers. Look at the flood inundation mapping is proving to be a game changer for emergency management. You can actually see what's going to flood 2-3 days before the actual flood takes place. And we'll have that available for Florida. We'll have that available for across the country, which is really big. The other big change, this is important too for Florida, the potential tropical cyclone. We started that when I was at the Hurricane Center, and it used to be versus, it was out 48 hours. So if you look at going back to Helene, we issued a potential tropical cyclone basically 24 hours before the system even developed. That's how the technology has changed. That's how the modeling has changed. More support in Congress at NOAA, the Weather Service, really do a great job with the modeling and have more confidence going in the future. 24 hours on an emergency manager's timeline is an eternity, basically, in preparedness, and to be able to do that. So this year, I wanted to announce for the first time, I don't think we've told too many people, we're going to do that 72 hours out. There's a risk. Some won't pan out, right? There's a risk associated with doing this, but the reward is greater than that risk because that can give you a couple days ahead of more notice. That's more people evacuated, more resources you can get in. That's more staging. That's a change. This year, we don't have the outlook yet. They're still working on it, but it looks like ENSO neutral. So we're really going into La Nina conditions. We'll see what that pans out. The sea surface temperatures are still super warm, everybody. So they're still records in some cases. If you look at that, it's a high activity era. So I don't see any reason that this season won't slow up, right? So it's still probably going to be initial forecasting not yet. It's still going to be. And I'll conclude with this. I'm still on my quest. You all know I've briefed you many times to transform this agency. I got the job 2.5 years ago. Coming out of Miami, the Hurricane Center. I've been on a quest to build a weather service that's transformed. So the current status of the weather service, we were built around our radars in the 1990s. I'm trying to build a weather service around our partners. Get us into the emergency operations centers. You've got to be eye to eye with those decision makers, and you all to be able to do those three things. And that's what we're really doing. So ready for the season, for whatever's going to happen. We always are across this country, and we'll make sure you get the services that Florida needs to be able to make those tough decisions. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I want to thank all the witnesses for taking the time and coming up. So we're going to go in the Q&A. We've got a list here, so you let us know. Jason's in the back, just let him know, and Debbie's going to lead off. I'm going to hold my questions to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each of you for your service and for your support for the state of Florida. Director Graham, reports are indicating that the National Weather Service has halted translations of weather alerts into languages like Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, French, and Samoan due to the expiration of a contract with an AI translation provider. Given that nearly 68 million U.S. residents speak a language other than English at home, including 42 million Spanish speakers, how does the NWS plan to address this critical gap in communications so we can ensure that non-English speaking communities get, like mine in South Florida, in many cases, receive that incredibly life-saving information? We have as many as 1 in 5 Floridians who are Spanish speakers, and obviously we face frequent storms.
Yeah, what I'm doing with that is I'm still going to try to push getting the contract through. But besides that, we have the San Juan office and the Miami office. They're ready to start doing some of the Spanish translation manually. So to be able to get us through the season, we go back to what we used to do and translate some of that information manually. The other part of it is I've put together a team as the contract expiration and start looking at how we can program some AI on what we've learned to be able to supplement what we had before. So trying to look at some different ways to do it as I continue to push this contract through. We're going to try to have some other ways that maybe we can do some of that internally, but I don't have that set up yet, but we're working on it.
Obviously, it's going to be difficult to manually translate Chinese, and we readily have Spanish speakers in offices in South Florida, but what is the obstacle to renewing this contract?
Contracts are being reviewed across the board, and I've got some of the contracts through, but this one's still being reviewed as a result. So there's a delay in getting that through the process. So I have to get all those contracts approved through not just through NOAA but through Commerce, and that's one of them still on the list. So every contract's being reviewed. So as that's still in the process, I'm hoping I can still push that one through. But I am thinking of the mitigation. I'm not going to be able to manually translate the Chinese, like you said, but I will be able to do the Spanish if I have to. And I'll continue to push hard to be able to do that.
Well, I hope we unite as a delegation for our Spanish-speaking constituents at the very least, but many others who speak other languages at home. It's pretty critical and life-saving for us to be able to make sure that people can get that vital safety information in the language that they understand the best. Also, Director Graham, NOAA, the NWS, play a critical role in early warnings during hurricanes. Can you just repeat what you said the new 72 hours notification is going to be?
That one's a real big deal. I started it when I was at the Hurricane Center. It's called the Potential Tropical Cyclone Product, and it's basically we can issue a cone. We can put out watches and warnings before the system even starts, and that's how much confidence that we've gained because of your support and really the modeling, being able to get those warnings out earlier, and that's what we did in Helene. We got the warnings out 24 hours before clouds even formed. People thought we were crazy. There was not much out there but clouds. We were already putting out a cone, but it panned out. So we're going to push that out. We're getting more and more confidence in what we're doing with the modeling and the forecast. We're going to push it out to 72 hours. So there's risk because I'll tell you now, there'll be some times where it doesn't form. And everyone's going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Weather Service, what are you doing, Graham? But at the same time, if I could give you a couple days on a timeline, it's already prepared to stay in Florida, right? One of our coasts.
Absolutely. I mean, we're a peninsula. Obviously, it makes it a lot more complicated and takes a lot longer to evacuate in our state than it does in nearly every other state, so especially to get outside the cone. And we have 5 appropriators on our delegation. We all work together diligently to support investments in the National Weather Service, in the hurricane research that's been so successful in making sure that you can get that cone to be more narrow, get the notifications out earlier so that we can all be safer. But the Department of Government Efficiency has slashed staffing at the National Weather Service, and that led to suspension of critical weather balloon launches, which is obviously a cornerstone of forecasting. Those are not just bureaucratic cuts, they're jeopardizing the very data that your team relies on to predict and track hurricanes. How are these staffing reductions impacting your ability to keep Floridians safe, and what do you need from Congress to restore NWS's full operational capacity in the onset of hurricane season?
What I'm doing now is, we're looking at the people that we're losing. So we're thinking about the staffing situation, and well, then we went into this pretty short staff, and as a result of early retirements and that sort of thing, we've got some offices across the Midwest, especially that are not able to issue these loans. And after we have the voluntary retirement, we're really looking at how we're going to mitigate some of these staffing losses. The good news is we're not having the big issues in Florida. So the biggest issues right now I have is the Midwest. Some of your less desirable locations where I have trouble filling some of those positions. I've lost a lot of folks there. We're trying to get offices to share some of the responsibilities, between offices, be able to look at one weather service instead of one office going forward. We're trying to look at getting everything from hiring exceptions, looking at being able to share between different offices. We're also looking at some very unique things of how do we get some of our meteorologists even at the headquarters levels deployed out, maybe temporarily, maybe deployed permanently out to some offices that are short. So I'm doing everything I can to protect that mission. And so far, everything, at least in Florida, the staffing looks okay for now. I will tell you that I had to cease air operations in Tallahassee, and I can't get the helium. So at university locations, they won't let us use the hydrogen, and we have it on the rooftop at university locations. So I'm having trouble dealing with both things. But the hydrogen locations, that's
Running around with, I can appreciate all the effort that you're making to make things as good as possible, but that's obviously an untenable situation, and you shouldn't have to be running around trying to figure out how to keep everyone safe in the country. We should be able to launch other balloons. We should not have staffing cuts right at the start of hurricane season, and we need to endeavor to make sure, as a separate and co-equal branch of government, that we can restore some of these vital funds and ensure that we can keep people safe, even in the less desirable places to live. My final question is to you, Dr. Brooks. We received troubling reports that the Trump administration is planning to quietly cut Everglades restoration funding by shifting money out of the account during the current CR, rather than allocating it at the FY25 enacted level. And that would delay or derail critical projects like the EAA reservoir. That's vital to flood control, quality control of water, and long-term resilience of our state, particularly in South Florida. Many of my Democratic and Republican colleagues in this room have fought alongside one another for years to secure historic funding for Everglades restoration. It cannot become a partisan casualty. So I urge you to help us to stop this budget sleight of hand before it becomes a casualty of decades of bipartisan progress protecting our environment in Florida. So can you speak to how damaging these funding delays would be, and that if they move money around so that Congress appropriated and the President signed into law for Everglades restoration funding in FY25 is fully allocated?
Thank you for your support of Everglades restoration. As you know, it is one of the state of Florida's key priorities moving forward. The governor has been especially strong, investing more in Everglades restoration than any other governor in state's history. Actually, go back 3 governors, add them all up, and it still doesn't come to the level of funding support at the state level that Governor DeSantis has pushed forward. It's a fluid situation right now with the administration is dealing with their civil works work plan. We have had communications with the administration on the importance of continuing those funds for the Everglades. The governor has made calls on behalf of the Everglades funding over continuing to support high residency budget levels as high as possible. So we're sort of in a wait-and-see place. The delegation has been incredibly successful, obviously securing those federal funds. It's more than 80% of the aquatic ecosystem restoration budget the court has nationwide is coming to Florida for this program. So as you know, we do face a lot of competition and a lot of interest from your colleagues in other places are working to make sure the administration knows the state of Florida's priorities, and that's what you all have done for us, for your constituents, and we will continue to do so.
My colleagues, we secured $425 million for Everglades restoration, the FY25 budget. It was pushed forward in the CR, and we have to make sure that money that Congress appropriated and now is law gets allocated for Everglades restoration as we intended. It should not be moved around. We get to decide where those funds get spent, not the administration. And yes, we've been fighting against competition for many, many years for other water projects, but we have to be able to make sure we can finish Everglades restoration. And that the administration doesn't just get to unilaterally take funds from an account that Congress decided would get that money and move it to some other priority. And if there's anything that we should be uniting on together, it is preventing that from happening. I hope that we can do that. Thank you. I yield back.
I want to try to get everybody to get a question or comment in, so let's try to keep it 4 minutes or under, be more concise. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you to all the witnesses for being here this morning. We really appreciate you coming up. Dr. Brooks, great to see you. I've got 2 quick questions for you. It's on beach nourishment. After these storms, obviously, we get a lot of issues there. 24 word of language dealing with these easements with Army Corps. Can you tell me how that's progressing?
I was hoping you'd be able to help me. We continue to work on the beach easement issue. And again, thank you for the united support of the Florida Congressional Delegation and pushing that language forward. It's a huge problem for our state, for Army Corps headquarters to unilaterally change the rules of the game on our local communities who are moving forward with regular beach renourishment programs that have been happening for decades across our state. So we've been working with the administration, talking with the Office of Management and Budget, and trying to make sure that there is some money in the supplemental for flood control and coastal emergencies. We would like to make sure that all of our projects that experienced damage after the most recent hurricanes are allocated appropriate funding for full renourishment in line with how those projects have been constructed in the past.
Thank you. Look, we're going to continue to work with you on those issues and try to get some movement. But the second thing, Mr. Wilson did a great job talking about our response in Florida. It really is, I think, one of the best in the world, probably. There's talk now, you've probably heard about having FEMA just go to be a funding agency and really leave it up to the states to do all the mitigation. And can you and Mr. Wilson tell me your thoughts on that? Whether you would support something like that, or
I will just say the Florida model and the one that the governor has championed the most is that Florida does not need to depend on anybody. We have many partners. The National Weather Service is a phenomenal partner of ours in particular. They come and do a great job briefing everybody in our local communities in the run-up to a hurricane. Certainly we have a good working relationship with FEMA, and we utilize resources and help manage those resources and get them to our local communities faster. But as the Congresswoman noted, we live out on a peninsula, and we have to take care of ourselves first and foremost. If we're not going to do that for ourselves, nobody else will. So I think we are best prepared to manage any sort of changes that may happen to the federal emergency management.
I agree. Mr. Wilson?
Hey, thank you for the question. I would go back to what I said earlier about just certainty and speed. And I don't know what the model for FEMA should look like or federal agencies, but let me say it in reverse. Our Commerce Department, for example, in the most recent storms, had almost 150 people out in the communities within 2 days of the storm, meeting with businesses, meeting with residents to find out what's going on, what do you need. got their act together. Everyone up here has had a role preparing Florida for this. We all know that we pre-position people, we pre-position supplies. My fear would be the other 49 states don't have what Florida has. Right? North Carolina just had their first Hurricane Andrew, as an example. And so I don't know that this would work nationally, but for Florida, I think through the last 20, 30 years, Florida's positioned itself to where federal block grants, faster decisions to say the state knows what it's doing, the state's prepared for this. How can we more quickly and clearly support what the state's already doing? And it's already been talked about today. There's too much left hand, right hand, not knowing what's going on. We need to be faster and we need to be clearer, and we'll save more lives and we'll save more property if we do that.
Thank you. See, my time's up, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Vern and Debbie, for bringing us together, and welcome to our new members to the delegation. And thank you all for being here. Mr. Rutherford, I'm glad you asked that question, because after living through the worst hurricane season in the Tampa Bay area in our lifetimes, I do not know how we could do it without a robust federal emergency management agency, even through a block grant program, because FEMA is able to surge in to help during the worst catastrophe, provide the inspectors on the ground right away, the disaster relief centers in partnership with the state and local EOCs and emergency managers. They surge in the search and rescue, the medical assistance teams. And I would not trust the state of Florida to set up a robust individual assistance system. Now, that doesn't mean we don't need reform, better customer service. And I'd suggest look at what Craig Fugate, our former state of Florida emergency management director, and he was the head of FEMA, look at some of his reforms. But I hear you loud and clear on the need for greater resilience. That's why I am incredibly concerned that the White House has just announced that they intend to end the BRIC program. And this is like on page 6 of your handout. So they've just, in the infrastructure law, Congress said, we know we have to cut the cost of disasters by helping make local communities more resilient. So we said $1 billion a year to go out across the country to help communities become more resilient. And now they announced that they're going to end that. So, Mr. Brooks, what is the impact right now on our communities across Florida? And then the other question is, we've got to get more people into flood insurance. And how do we do that so that it's affordable for a lot of our neighbors?
Sure. Thank you, ma'am, for those questions. In terms of the Building Resilience in Infrastructure and Communities program, that program, we've had a couple communities across Florida compete for funding and secure some of that funding. My understanding is any of those funds that have been obligated, those communities are going to continue to be able to build on. Some of the national criticisms of that program, beyond what we've heard about, certain requirements for use of certain language and things like that in applications, is that it's really targeted at larger communities, cities in particular. Small communities, rural communities have not been able to access those funds because of all of the everything associated with those programs. And so, again, we've been lucky. Florida is more advanced, and Florida communities in general are more advanced. But again, you're looking at the South Florida region mainly taking advantage of those funds thus far.
Do you know how much now is at risk?
I do not know off the top of my head. We are working with our partners to understand the impact. The good news is that there is lots of other resources, as also detailed in that guidebook, and in particular for Florida, the downside of having 6 hurricanes is a lot. But we are also able to rely on the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, and I give DEM a ton of credit. They work very closely with local communities to tabulate all the costs incurred across a disaster as quickly as possible so that we qualify for a higher amount of funding for mitigation. And so after Hurricane Ian, we got an allocation of just over $900 million, I believe, with a 25% non-federal match associated with it. And now for the FY23-24 storms, we're expecting another $900 million or so in total. And so that dwarfs any impact of BRIC in the state of Florida right now. And frankly, we're finding that there are a lot of resilience needs, but there's a lot of funding right now to fill those, and we don't necessarily have all of the local match in these communities as well. Communities are struggling to bring the projects up to even go in the ground. So I think we're actually at a really good place with resilience funding at the moment in the state.
And then the flood insurance.
Yes. So, and on the flood insurance is a tricky topic. I might be a doctor, but I'm not sure I necessarily have all that expertise necessary. There are private flood insurance options that the state regulates, and then there's the National Flood Insurance Program. And that program, as you know, has gone through a variety of different rules and regulation changes right now, and premium increases. And I know you all are doing everything you can to keep that program afloat and moving. And I think certainly we want folks who need it to buy flood insurance. In the state of Florida, that's an awful lot of people. We need to make it affordable and accessible to everyone.
We're going to have to go like 3 or 4 minutes because I want everybody to get a chance to ask a question. It's hard to do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I do want to echo the comments that were made by the panel about Florida being number one, great, resilient. I hear that from the directors of FEMA sequentially, and I agree. I think Florida has done a great job. And part of the gratitude for that goes to the representatives, a number of people here on the panel who've served in the Tallahassee House. Thank you. Thank you very much for all the efforts you did. Also to FDEM, fabulous organization, runs very well. Kevin Guthrie now, formerly chaired law school. We have great people in Florida. Nonetheless, it can be improved, as Mark said. And I have 2 areas of interest. One is the loan, FEMA loan interest. These are disaster loans taken out by whatever authority, county, rural electric co-ops, or the state, whoever the cities. And they take these loans out to meet the disasters, and then they expect to be paid back by FEMA for the principal on the loan. And by the way, FEMA has the authorization to pay the interest on the loan as well, although they're under current law not obligated to, and they seem to frankly not do it. I know we don't have FEMA here, but I want all the members of the panel to join with me in this. I have a bill that's been out for several terms now. It would obligate FEMA to pay the interest on the loan after the first year. So the first year FEMA has to do their due diligence and figure out whether or not these loans are covered. But after that first year, they pay the interest. And the thought here is simply, this is good business. It incentivizes FEMA to work quickly. And I have loans outstanding from Hurricane Michael. That's the signature. Well, I've had 4 hurricanes since Michael that made landfall in my district. But Michael was the worst one. And I'm still, here we are 6+ years later. And one county has $14 million in interest only on those loans. And FEMA continues to delay. So I would like everybody's support in making FEMA pay that interest back after that first year of due diligence. Then they're obligated. And the second is clawbacks. And I know we've all seen these, we've all heard about them. These are killing my counties. They're just killing them. Especially, I don't live in Miami. I have Washington County, I have Chipley, I have Wakulla. These counties cannot afford a clawback. We have loans that were for roads. Now I'm just going to focus on road repairs. We have roads devastated by the hurricane, by the traffic on them afterwards. And the projects have been approved by FDEM, approved by FEMA, multiple times, audited. In the case of the 2 counties I'm going to reference, they were audited 3 times and 4 times. Twice each county, 100% audits by FEMA, approved. Money was let, money was spent, roads are built. 6 years later, FEMA comes in and wants $100 million back. $100 million back. The road's been built. $60 million of that is from one county that is a rural, fiscally constrained county. They can't pay $60 million back in 1,000 years. No way. And FEMA is leaning on it for $60 million. This is ridiculous. I want to have a clawback law. I have a bill for that. I urge everybody's support of that, especially from Florida. And those are things that I have lived with this storm now for 6+ years. It is the defining center of my term in office. No kidding. It's not the proudest thing to represent, but it's something you got to do for people. You absolutely have to do it. So I really want you guys' support. I want your support, people on the panel, for all of these things. And I'm going to close by making a plea to Noah. Snapper season. Jimmy and I are really upset about this snapper season. And with that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning. And I think I'm on Neil's bill. I think I've been on his bill now for a couple years to make the interest reimbursable. Good to be with you, Ken and Mark and Wes. I'm really going to talk more to my colleagues, to be very direct with them. So listen, I've been dialoguing with the White House at the highest levels, along with the folks at Homeland. And this FEMA situation is in way worse shape than you're aware of, okay? It's not just about, getting rid of FEMA, okay? So Byron Donalds and I have a bill to take FEMA out of Homeland, which would help solve a lot of the problem. Right now, FEMA is being misused because Homeland is using FEMA for the other 22 agencies to run all of the grants within Homeland. That's why why is FEMA doing immigration grants? It's because the Homeland General Counsel instructed FEMA to do those immigration grants. That money that went out the door a couple weeks ago that FEMA got in trouble for, that was directed by the Homeland General Counsel. If you take FEMA out of Homeland, you shrink FEMA's grant department by 50% right away. And you give it back to the White House, you give it back to the president, which is where it was before 9/11. Okay? We can do block grants. I'm going to come out with a bill that will give the governor the ability to request a block grant as approved by the president. Florida did block grants. We did the citrus block grant. We did the timber block grant. We can do block grants. A lot of other states won't be able to do that. But if you think Florida can handle an event just on its own, if we just got money, that is true for some events. But as Ken knows, when we were worried about Dorian coming our direction and it stopped 75 miles off our coast and hit the Bahamas, went due north, FEMA doesn't have assets. They have zero assets. They got bottled water and they have tarps. But what FEMA does is they coordinate other federal agencies. DOD had moved so much equipment to the region ready to respond had Dorian hit, because Dorian, the wind exceeded the 160-mile-an-hour hurricane glass that we've all installed in Florida. So if there isn't someone coordinating those assets, those federal assets for big events, I'm telling you, we're going to be in trouble, no matter how strong FDEM is. And they are strong. FDEM and TDEM in Texas are the two strongest. And so, look, there's talk right now about breaking FEMA down within Homeland and giving one department this function, one department another function. I don't know how that's going to be efficient. They're talking about getting rid of categories and just only allowing category A and B. So just so we're clear, if they get rid of D through G, roads are not reimbursable, bridges are not reimbursable. All of the beaches in Florida are screwed because none of that will be reimbursable. So the amount of money that will have to start coming out of city, county, state budgets, it will realign how we respond to stuff in Florida. So I don't want to take too much time, but I do want to tell my colleagues that this is something that I know we think like, oh, that's not going to happen. It's in statute, the Stafford Act, and that's all true. But I can tell you the folks in Homeland have a different plan at the highest level. And there's a disconnect, I think, between Homeland and the White House with what the direction is right now with FEMA. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, sir. Glad to be here. Mark, thank you for all your litigation help. The reforms have helped. I know there's a battle taking place right now in Florida, and your team is holding the line, so thank you for doing that. Wes, my questions are driven towards you. Who produced this?
That was my office, sir.
Okay, and who gets to access this document?
That document is shared with all local communities and state agencies.
Okay, why isn't the My Safe Florida Home program in this document?
Because that is the programs that the governor's office has authority over.
You mentioned federal programs in here, though.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And
all right, I'm embarrassed.
Well, those are the federal programs that we manage, sir. I will say a huge supporter of the My Safe Florida Home program.
And put it in your book. It's all taxpayers' money.
We
this
certainly
program makes
share
a difference.
Information about it as well. Absolutely. And
Your governor puts the money in his budget.
He has $600 million in the budget this year to make sure we take care of the waiting list.
I'm going to embarrass you on this. There's no excuse it's not in this book. There's laws in the books that force discounts to be passed on to our policyholders.
Yes, sir.
Okay, because of the My Safe Florida Home program. Aaron Bean created that program. Randy Fine funded that program. I administered that program. Put it in your book.
We'll make sure we do that, sir.
No further.
And he cares about the snapper, too.
Anna?
I just wanted to start out by saying thank you guys for being here today. As you know, we are in contact with some of you throughout this last hurricane season, and Pinellas got pretty badly hit. We actually had 13 people die during one of the hurricanes. Dr. Brooks, my first question is for you. As Florida Chief Resilience Officer, you know better than anyone that one of the major threats after hurricane and tropical storms are the effects of floods, especially for those living inland. Can you please expand on some of the work that you and your department have done in order to help mitigate the impacts of floods during hurricanes?
Absolutely. Well, a lot of the work that we do is very proactive and in front of storms. So I'll mention the Department of Environmental Protection's Resilient Florida program. We've put out over $1.5 billion in funding to help support the reduction in flood vulnerability for critical assets and infrastructure across the state. We've also supported flood vulnerability assessments in communities across the state. All 67 counties and about 380 of the state's 411 municipalities are in some process of conducting those flood vulnerability assessments, which gives them the best information on where to stage their assets, what assets they need to actually adapt, and things of that nature. And we're working on getting the last 30 to 40 in the docket this year as well.
Okay, and what can you tell us about the initiative and efforts to invest in resilience infrastructure, and is this program sufficiently prepared for the next hurricane season?
We'd like to think so. We continue to support getting more resources through the state legislature for that purpose. One of the big things that I have been working on is not just the focus on public infrastructure, but when I go around to local communities, I do mention programs like My Safe Florida Home to make sure that we're also incentivizing private mitigation measures. And sir, if I may also add, one of the reasons why My Safe Florida Home is not in there is because it is windstorm focused, and the guide is based on flooding.
Mr. Chairman,
just to clarify.
Yeah,
just understand, there's no excuse it's not in there.
We will work on that, sir.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
And
Happy to work with you in your
other
office.
than just drop the content in, because when we're spending $600 million over the last 3 years, where it has dropped insurance rates by the average policy over $1,000. Every single one of us up here is getting our ass worn out because of property tax premiums. Insurance premiums. So the program works. Hardening works. There's no excuse that's not included in here. If you want to keep on bringing this back up, I'll keep on tearing you up on it.
No, sir. I just
we're
wanted
a
to
team
provide
on
you
this.
with that context.
Guys, if I can
Sorry,
finish
ma'am.
my line of questioning. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
And my last question for you is one of the biggest responses we've gotten from residents in our community, and I would say residents across the state of Florida, is the issue with the 50% rule from FEMA. I wanted to see just your perspective. I had the FEMA administrator down in my community, and we were working and talking with a bunch of our beach mayors that were impacted by this last hurricane. We have a bunch of seniors that are on fixed income that are getting pushed out because of this 50% rule. Real quick, do you think that there needs to be a better solution? Because we are requesting a meeting with the White House about this specific issue.
So it's definitely not my area of expertise, but we always want to do as much as we can for residents in the state. And those calculations are really tedious, and they can be influenced really easily. So I think a more robust
So you would support an overhaul of it?
I think a more robust standard would be helpful.
I'm seeing
for
that
everybody.
Mark's waving. Do you have any commentary on it real quick?
Same place.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. This is for Dr. Brooks. As a senior member of the Health and Communications Committee, I'd like to talk about internet infrastructure and rebuilding, of course. How have existing communications equipment withstood recent hurricanes, and are there federal barriers that exist that prevent or hinder rebuilding communication networks or strengthening existing networks?
So, Congressman, thank you for the question. That I would have to defer to the Division of Emergency Management on that specific question, and I can get that answer for you But what I would say is all of that communications infrastructure is also eligible for all of our flood resilience awards in the state. But let me get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please do. Mr. Graham, I have a bill to basically, well, let me ask you this. How important is AM radio in communicating to individuals before, during, and after the natural disasters? It's my understanding that AM radio, if all else fails, people turn to AM radio. And I have a bill to make sure that the AM radio stays in the automobiles. I represent quite a bit of Central Florida, the west side, and we have some rural areas as well. But I know people depend on AM radio for a lot of reasons, but this is very important as far as communications during a disaster. So if you could expand on that and tell me how important AM radio is. We have a markup scheduled next month on my particular bill, and my constituents are concerned. So if you could elaborate, I appreciate it.
The biggest comment I have on that is, one of the things that the Weather Service always does in preparedness is have multiple ways to get information. And as a person that's been through Katrina and too many hurricanes to name over the years, I've seen communications fail in those events where, everything from internet to radio, and even our systems at times in the biggest of hurricanes. So even I am a ham radio licensed operator, WX4KEG, so I always YouTube. Yeah, so I always believe, and won't comment necessarily just on AM, but the Weather Service completely believes that if you have multiple ways to get information, that's the best way to go in these disasters. And after Hurricane Katrina, the ham radio is the only thing that worked after that. So that's the way to get information out, and we try to promote it. Some of the young folks don't understand that the internet's not going to work. The next generation thinks their phone's always going to work through these events, and I try to tell them you better have multiple ways to get information. That's the best thing I can say.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I yield back.
Jump in just quickly. In terms of the chamber, one of the areas that really got impacted, as you know, these storms all over the state, is small business, and a lot of them in St. Armand Circle and different places. They got multiple storms hit. What more can the chamber do, the state, or even the local level, to help these businesses get back on their feet quicker?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and you're exactly right. Florida's mostly small businesses, I think, as everyone knows, and small businesses have to make pretty quick decisions about whether they're even going to stay in business or not. And if you think about an early learning center, for example, they're actually watching kids so people can go back to work and take care of things. So there's all kinds of reasons to support small businesses. Florida has the largest small business emergency loan program in the country by far. I want to go back to something Congressman Dunn said, and I think even Congresswoman Castro mentioned, the coordination, whether it's block grants or otherwise, the coordination needs to be faster and it needs to be clear. We're getting loan requests from small businesses so they can stay in business. And the state of Florida is trying to say yes. It is sometimes weeks or months before FEMA and other federal agencies can come in and make a decision on any of this stuff. So if a small business is trying to decide whether to stay open or not, they need a decision today or this week. It can't wait months and months. And so what we need, right, is, again, in a nonpartisan conversation, we need to say keeping small businesses in business is a priority. And before a storm, we need to educate them on what their options are. After a storm, we need to give them a quick decision about, is the state and federal government going to be there? Right now, the state is there. And right now, sometimes months later, whether it's the SBA or whether it's FEMA, we don't have answers that are clear. And so we need to work on that.
Let me ask Ken and West real quick. I live on the beach and have for 30-some years. I've never seen a storm like these multiple storms that have come up. It's not just the water that came in, and we didn't have much water. The water came up to one of the houses or something, but it took the beach and put it in our front yard and put it, there was 4 feet of sand, and that's after 30 years of living in the same house. I just was shocked to see that. What's changed? Because I've never seen that in 30 years. And this is, of course, the Longboat Key area, the west part of Florida. Can you explain that at all, or what your thoughts are on it? Or I know the city of Longboat is already on resilience, and they're spending money and looking to raise a lot of things up, try to get ahead of the storms coming up. But what's your thought on that, Ken? Is there anything, or Wes, that this was so different? Anna Maria Island, I've got that district, it just, took houses just completely down with the sand and everything else. Again, even up there, I've never seen anything like it. It just covered the whole place.
And it's an interesting answer that I have. I mean, the storms are pretty similar. I mean, you see that, in Louisiana, I've seen it in Alabama, other places, in Texas as well. I think if you look back at history, what's really interesting, especially in the Tampa area, it was about a 100-year drought of hurricanes in that area.
Yeah, we've been very lucky.
Lucked out over the years, and we, all the preparedness that I did as Hurricane Center Director, I said, it's just a matter of time. We kept saying that type of thing. So a lot of it is just, you've got so much growth, you've got, beautiful beaches, and you just happen to have some really strong storms. But putting that beach far inland, putting sand in houses.
I'm not talking like 100 feet. I mean, this is like 400 or 500 feet, brought it up in there. I'm going to jump over to Aaron. I know he's got to run.
Mr. Chairman, a very good morning to you, and good morning, Florida delegation. Welcome to our two members. It's good to see us working together, Chairman. This delegation, really, when we work together, there's really nothing that we can't do. It's good to see us all together, Chairman. Thanks for bringing us together. Gentlemen, welcome to your nation's capital. There's so much going on. I'm going into lightning round because I have to run. I actually do right now, but I wanted to stay because there's so many things you've talked about. You talked about so much. So just the lightning round, it's a gut reaction. What do you worry about? We're entering hurricane season. You've talked. There's been so many issues you've talked about. What do we need to worry? What are you worried about, Wes? What say you?
Well, I'll just play to one of your strengths, sir, and just thank you for your efforts on 404 permitting reform. One of the
it's
big
a great
things,
commercial. Thank you so much. Everybody needs to sign on to the 404 rehab program. Florida needs to jump on there. So you get a bonus 1 minute to talk about that if you want.
Thank you, sir. One of the things we do struggle with in dealing with the Army Corps in particular is as we go to move forward with these proactive flood solutions, you're oftentimes dealing with wetlands or wetland impacts. And even after storms in Congressman Dunn's district, in particular Bay County, we're having issues taking advantage of some of the federal mitigation funding because the permit delays are just killing us.
Wes, thank you. You're in the lead right now. That's a great answer. Top that one, Mark Wilson. What say you? What do you worry about, my friend?
Thank you. I'm not going to try to top it. What I worry about is just the continued lack of coordination. I think we know we're going to have storms.
Yeah.
So how can we right now? It reminds me in Florida we build schools, and the day we open them, we have portables out back as if we didn't know we're a growing state. So how can local, state, and federal work together now amidst the chaos that you mentioned?
Yeah.
Right. How can we work together ahead of the storm? It's all unknown known, and so that's what I worry about.
And for Mark, that's a great question, and I think to the bill that takes out FEMA and puts it by itself is a step, but we look to the chamber to give us some good answers of how we can do better. And Ken, what say you, my friend?
It's an interesting answer. Hurricane fatigue. When you get hit that many times, multiple times, the public has a tendency to say, I'm just done. So we, as a delegation, Weather Service, all of us have to team up together to keep telling people it's just a matter of time. It can happen back to back at the same place.
10-4. Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. All great answers. Thank you so much. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Darren?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. First, Mr. Graham, I know we saw some proposed cuts to the National Weather Service. Have we seen those realized yet, and how is that affecting your ability of your agency to be able to protect hurricanes?
I think so far what we're seeing is just with retirements and some of the activities that have gone with staffing, and Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz already brought it up, and the staffing part of it is sort of trying to mitigate the most. So that part of it, we have a voluntary retirement coming up where more people will take it. I have an agency where a lot of us came in the 1990s, and a lot of us are approaching retirement age. So I have a very heavy staff that is really eligible, and they're taking these programs. So my job is going to be trying to shuffle things around as I can't. There's a hiring freeze, and I can't hire behind it. So, one part of it is the funding part, but the biggest part, the challenge I'm having is to make sure I've got the staff to do it. And right now, Florida looks okay, but at the same time, I want to make sure that carries across the country what I have to do.
Some of these probationary employees, though, they could be experts, right? It's just the fact that they came in relatively new, right? Have we seen any critical hurricane experts that were released because of being a probationary employee in our area?
Yeah, not in Florida and not at the Hurricane Center.
And then, Mr. Brooks, thanks for being here. I know there's been some talk of revamping FEMA or having most of disaster relief and recovery go to the states. How critical is the partnership between FEMA and, I know you're not with Department of Emergency Management, but you are resiliency at Department of Environmental Protection. How critical is that partnership before, during, and after a hurricane?
Thank you, Congressman. Good to see you, sir.
Great to see you.
We discussed it a little bit earlier as well. I mean, I think we really rely on partnerships and coordination across the board in Florida. But Florida really is built to withstand a lot of the worst impacts just through sheer experience and force of will. I think one of the best things that DEM does is understand the rules of the road and what they need to do. And they try to distill all of that down and make it as easy and simple for local communities as possible. And so, we'll continue to do that regardless of what the future looks like with our partners.
And my last question, what functions do you think the state could pick up if FEMA were to delegate?
I would have to defer that to my colleague, Kevin Guthrie, sir.
Okay, thanks. I yield back.
Randy?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. New guy, I said, put me at the end. So thank you. I really just
wrap up.
Well, that's fine. I'll try. I wanted to make 3 points of things that I think are important for everybody to be thinking about. The first is, while I am thrilled with what we have accomplished in the insurance world, and to see that in premiums, I wish we were able to get it done in autos, but that's another. I mean, that savings in the homeowners got blown away by that side of things this year. But as someone who lost my own home in 2016. I got to live the experience of it taking 3 years to work through the claims process with the insurance company. Now, I did not sue. I was not part of the litigation nightmare. I just was determined and dogged and persistent. And I don't think it should take people 3 years when they have these problems. I'm very fortunate. I was able to fade the volatility. I had the resources to wait out the insurance company. Most people don't. And I think that's something that we have to work on. The second thing is I think we have to come up with solutions to what I'll call the moral hazard problem of flood insurance. Everyone should get flood insurance. It should be priced appropriately. If you're not in a high flood risk, it shouldn't be very expensive. If you are, it should. But what we have a problem is people don't get it, and then they want the government to bail them out thereafter when they don't, which creates even less incentive for people to have that moving forward. I think that's something we have to figure out solutions to. And then the last thing, this is something I've heard about in all 3 of the new beachside communities, beachside counties I'll represent, is the issue of beach renourishment. And the problems seem different based on where you are. Where I have previously represented Brevard County, it has not been an issue. We seem to have figured it out. But in some of these new places I will be representing, Volusia, Flagler, and St. John's, it seems to be a much bigger issue. I don't know why, and it's something that I intend to figure out. But there's a lot of nice places you can live in the winter that have nice weather and low taxes. There aren't a lot that have beaches and all of our waterways. And if we mess that up, people won't have a reason to keep coming to Florida. So I hope I can work with all 3 of you and others on those issues moving forward. And thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just one quick thing, resilience, Wes, and I kind of skipped over. I want to get to talk to you just a little bit. Longboat's got an effort that's going on. How many cities or counties are, making the investment? It was a big number. But I'm just curious where that's at and what more we could be doing, because you could probably save a lot more money by doing some things up front. And they're doing a lot of work where I live right now. And, it's a pain in the ass, and pardon my French, but in terms of trying to move around, but in terms of traffic and everything. But it's the right thing to get ready for not just these last storms, but new storms going forward, possibly.
Yes, sir. And as I mentioned, Florida has been really pushing proactive planning efforts, in particular, to understand flood vulnerability so we can guide better flood mitigation projects. And right now, all 67 counties are doing a comprehensive flood vulnerability analysis, And again, we're around 380 of our 411 municipalities are funded by the state to do so as well, and we're going to get those last holdouts this year.
Well, I know we got a full court press going on where we're at, but what I've been told will make a huge difference. You either pay now or you pay 10 times more later. That's it. Anyway, I want to thank all our witnesses, and I've had the opportunity to work with all of you over the years, and we want to work together closely with you in terms of the bipartisan delegation to get more done up front. I'm very big myself on planning, getting a vision, a plan, and go out and make it happen. Thank you, and have a great day.
Mr. Chairman, I also want to thank the witnesses for joining us. Each of them has really had a remarkable career and are very accessible, and we appreciate all your efforts so much. And I'll just again reiterate how critical it is on the key issues that relate to protecting the state of Florida and making sure that we get the resources that we need, that we ensure that Florida is safe during hurricane season, that we stop oil drilling off our coast that could threaten our economy and so many of our residents. We have been a family, and we need to make sure that we continue that tradition. Thank you.
I'll just add one other thing is that we've got a 30-member delegation when you take into account the 2 senators. We have more impact potentially than anywhere else in the country. When we work together, we can get big things done on a bipartisan basis. Thanks again.